Hello everyone, it is Delta, and if you are here, it is probably because you read the title and you want to learn how to hand sew. Now this is just going to be a generalized video of things that I do personally, and you should be able to apply it to a few different sewing projects. In this case, we will be making a stuffed fishy prop, but a lot of the stuff can also be applied to other things like making fursuit parts like paws, tails, and whatnot. Then we're going to start off with some general supplies that you're going to need in order to start hand sewing. First thing you're going to want is some scissors. This is my pair of scissors. You're going to want a spool of thread. This is machine quilting thread is what I'm using. The thread is, and I can't see it, the thread is really thick and good, and it won't break as easily. You're going to want a pin cushion with pins and needles. Pins. And these are the needles. If you're working on something a little bit bigger, that needs a little bit more sturdier thing, you might want to use a J needle, which is this curved needle. It's a lot thicker. Let that go back in. Alternatively to pins, you might decide that you want to get some clips. They work just like a clothespin would. After that, you're going to need pens or markers in order to make your pattern on a piece of paper. You're going to trace it out, cut it out. After that, you're going to need your fabric of choice and some type of utensil to mark on your fabric. This could be a Sharpie marker. Just know that your Sharpie marker is going to come off on you. It could be chalk, or in this case, I have a marker with one side that's mark be gone, which means it will come off in the washing machine, and the other side is disappearing ink or air-soluble ink. It'll eventually go away after time on its own. And with that, we will go into the steps on how to sew up a fishy. Alrighty, so like I said, the first thing that you're going to want to do is get a piece of paper. It could be a very long piece of paper, newspaper, whatever you want. In this case, I use construction paper. And you're going to want to trace out your pattern. In this case, it is a fish, like we stated previously. It could be anything, and it can be as simple as this, or as complex as you need it to be. The next thing you're going to want to do is get your fabric after you get your thing. I'm using a scrap piece of fabric to show you guys. So on one side, your fabric is going to be bold and bright, and on the other side is going to be more dull. I am using a no-pill fleece, and when you go to trace your pattern, you are going to want to trace on the dull side, because if you trace on the other side, your marker may show through. Now this isn't going to fit this, obviously, but when you do this, you're going to want to pin down your pattern to your fabric, like so. And then when you do it, you're going to want to mark it, in this case, it's purple side, and you're just going to mark it all the way around. And once you've done that, you can cut it. If you're using a sewing machine, you're going to want to allow about 1 inch of allowance, which means instead of cutting directly on this line that you can kind of see, instead of cutting directly on this line, you're going to want about 1 inch, which is about the first knuckle around. That way you have a seam allowance. In this case scenario, I'm hand sewing and I don't really care. It means that your pattern is going to be, your fish is going to be a little bit smaller than what it is right now, but if you're machine sewing, which you're not going to be doing because this is a hand sewing tutorial, it doesn't really matter. So there you have it. So you're going to cut out 2 fishes in fabric, and when you're done, it's going to look like this. I have 2 here. This is my more vibrant side, and this is the dull side. You cannot see the lines because I traced these out a good while ago with the purple marker, and the lines are more or less gone now. So the next step is going to be either pinning or clipping. Now you can pin or clip in a few different ways. This is one way some people pin this top bit. Ooh, I can't, there you go. So kind of pin like that. Or you can pin it this way, whichever you prefer. Or in my case scenario, I'm preferring clips. So let me grab my clips. And I'm going to clip this real quick. And you want the clips to be about evenly spaced. You're also going to want to make sure that these are lined up as close as possible. That way there's no problems when sewing. Now on one end, preferably near the back end, you're going to make sure that you have it one side that you're not going to sew. In this case, I'm sectioning it off by clips. So this section right here, I will not be sewing shut, but the rest of this edge I will be. So the next thing is how to measure and thread your needle. Now, I like to double my thread, meaning that when the thread is pulled through the needle, it's going to be, oh god, doubled over kind of like this. Not that you can see it because it won't focus. But I like to measure out my whole arm span. So all the way out and then all the way out to the other side. Because I will be doubling it. So I measured it out. Now I would not work with more string or thread than your arm span because that will get really, really tricky. So the next thing to do is you're going to bring your pincushion over here. The next thing, and this is the thing that I find is really helpful when trying to thread, because if I try to do it right now, it's going to be a little bit difficult. I mean, I could probably do it because I'm so used to it, but it's hard to get in. I just did, but I've been doing this for a long time. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at my fingers. It may seem a little gross, but I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to take my thread and go like this. Kind of make it straight and stuff. That way nothing gets caught when I'm trying to thread it. You could use a threading tool, but I've never gotten them to work. And then I'm just going to thread it through and then pull it through. So after I've done this bit, I'm going to stick it back in my pin cushion. I'm going to find the other end. And I'm going to get these as close to even as possible. It's about as close as even as I'm going to get. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold them in my finger like this, twirl it around so that I'm holding it like a loop. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist it off and, oh, it didn't go that time. You can't watch it. Hold it, twist it off, and I'm going to pull it through. And that creates a nice clean knot. It's the easiest way to make a knot that I have found. It's better than trying to tie both ends together. And then once that's done, I'm going to make sure that this is pulled all the way through and even all the way through. And then we will begin sewing. When I start sewing, and this is how I sew, I'm going to start, I'm going to push this through and pull it all the way through. And then I'm going to go around and I'm going to go as close as I can to this original entry point, stick my needle through again, And once my needle's all the way through, like it is right now, I'm going to come over here to the thread that's hanging down. It's kind of like a loop. I'm going to pull until it is taut, and it kind of makes this little loop. And then I'm going to pull it through the loop, and this creates a knot. So once I have this knot, I'll continue sewing. So I measure, this is going to be a little bit hard to see. So I start with this bit of my thumb right here, and I go to the end of my nail. And that's where I'm going to make the next entry mark. And that's about 1 millimeter. So when I do these, I make them about 1 millimeter apart. And then I just keep going, pulling the thread through and essentially knotting it. And then you get something like that. Now, you can make them closer together, but that might scrunch up your fabric, like that. Or you could space them out more, but you might get holes. Try to avoid either. Now, when I'm done sewing this, so if I was going to end this here, make sure that you don't have less than 2 inches of thread left when you go to finish off your knot, because you won't be able to loop it. So I'm going to do essentially what I did. So I already did it once. Pull through again. And then do it a third time in the same spot. Let me get around my clips. And at this point, the knot should be sturdy enough in that spot that it should not come undone. Stick your needle in your pincushion and snip it off. And that is how you finish your stitching. And we will be right back once I got this all the way down and around until this spot. Alright, so I have finished going around the whole entire edge. Obviously I had to stop a few times. Here you go, there's a good-ish spot. A few times to rethread my needle. And now we're at the part where I left off, where there's a hole. So I'm going to unclip them, and I'm going to turn this fish completely inside out, starting with the little fins on the back. And then the body of the fish. And then I'm going to make him all nice. And work him all the way out. I'm just going along the edges right now to like make sure that everything is nice and out. Now I use black thread, which means that the seam is probably going to show through. If you wanted to make sure that the seam wouldn't show through, you would probably pick whatever the base color is of your piece you're working on. So if it was white, you would use white thread. If it was orange, you would use orange thread, which I probably should have used, but I didn't, because I just don't give a fuck. And make sure he's all nice. Now, a few extra things that I'll be using, because obviously he's all flat. I will be using some polyfill to fluff and stuff him up. And have these bells. Only one will go in though. So we just one bell. That way you guys can hear it. And some googly eye buttons that I have. These googly eye buttons are definitely not the best. They're actually quite crap. Let's find another eye that's better. So I'll be sewing on 2 eyes for Fishy Friend. find a nice one. God. These are bad ones. All of these. It's really crap. It's probably as good as I'm gonna get. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put the stuffing inside of Little Fishy Friend. Now when you do this, you don't want to squish it all that much. You want to make sure it's nice and fluffy. You can take this and tear it apart like I'm doing, and then to fluffen it up, and then you're just gonna take it and fill in your fishy. Alright, so once your fishy friend is stuffed to your likeness, you're going to want to sew the seam up. So what I'm going to do personally is I will pin this bit closed, and then another one, and there will be like a little hole right here to start. So take your thread that you've already gone through and knotted at the end. Mine's a little bit shorter because this was the leftover thread I had after finishing him. And you're going to want, what's the best way to show you guys this? So this thread is actually going to go through in the hole, in through here. That way the little tail end of that is hidden as best I can. And then I'm just going to essentially go sew them through like this without making a knot. So essentially like we did earlier, but without making a knot this time. I'm going to do that a bunch of times over again. And it's called a whip stitch. The other stitch was called a quilted stitch or a blanket stitch. I'm going to do that all around the times. Sure, it's going to be a little bit visible, but it could be way worse. So I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to tie it off. Do my 3. Oops, I forgot to knot it that time. Oh well. It won't hurt. Okay, so that's the last one. Now to hide this end of the seam, I'm going to actually go through and over here somewhere. See how I'm just kind of going through? I'm gonna pull this through. Ooh, come on. And then I'm gonna cut it here. That way. You can't see it. Now sure, this edge is like a little rough, but I think it adds character. So next thing I'm gonna do to Little Fishy Dude is figure out where to sew the eyes and eventually sew on a mouth. So I'm going to take my purple side, the side that's this, and I'm going to mark it. I'm eyeballing it because I don't really care. That's about right. So the mouth, I'll do it this way. Oh shoot, you can't even see him. Gonna do it this way so that I can. It's about the same. And then it'll disappear when it's done. Eventually. So this isn't exactly a sewing tutorial on how to sew on buttons or eyes. I'm gonna do a really bad job, probably. So take what I'm doing with a grain of salt, because I'm probably doing it wrong. This isn't a whole lot of thread, so I'm just going to discard it. Now to sew the mouth. Now technically I should probably be using embroidery thread, but I'm not. This will be an embroidery technique that I will be using. Sorry for the water, I was thirsty. So in this case I'm going to, hopefully that you see what I'm doing. Follow the line essentially. And then I'm gonna do it again. Come out hopefully in the same spot. And that creates a little line. So I'm gonna do that to the rest of his mouth. And there you have it. A fishy. Now these guys I'm making for World Wild Fur Camp 2022. It's our first year back since COVID happened. I'll have a booth during their Dearler's Den, which they're calling the God, I don't remember what it is. We'll edit it in. I'm dumb. But I'll be selling those there, and if I have any left over, I'll be selling them online. So if you want one, and you see that they're up on my social media, then buy one. Eee. Little fishy dude. Little fishy dudes. Hopefully